This is the Benchwarmers Podcast featuring Ethan and Carlo.
What's going on, y'all? Welcome back to the podcast. I'm here with Carlo.
What it do, everyone?
Yeah, so I hope y'all had a really, really good Super Bowl weekend. I know I did. Although, the first hour I might have been watching it on my phone because I had no one to go with. And then somebody was like, hey, let's go to Chili's. So I did. So here's my funny little story. We go to Chili's and, everything was fine up until one particular point in the game. It wasn't really in the game. Mm-hmm. The halftime show.
Yeah.
So I don't recommend watching the muted performances of the halftime show. But, yeah, that's the gist of what I was up to on the weekend. How about you, Carlo? What were you up to this weekend?
I mean, of course, watching the Super Bowl and air frying for the Super Bowl.
Let's go.
It was a pretty great time,
Yeah. What'd you air fry?
Chicken tendies.
You never even told me that, but
yeah.
Nice. Let's go. Nice. So yeah, today, guys, we're gonna try to we're gonna do a couple little news stories that have come out, including we're just gonna recap the Super Bowl, discuss what's next for our teams, and we'll talk about a couple other things that we'll get into later on in the podcast. So I kind of want to start it off with the Super Bowl recap. Mm-hmm. What was the keys to the Rams' victory, and what were the keys to the Bengals' downfall?
Defense.
I
mean, it was predominantly a defensive game.
Surprisingly.
For the most part, it was predominantly a defensive game, but also the Bengals' offensive line still needs a lot of pieces.
Goodness.
And I called it on the last show that the biggest downfall for the Bengals is going to be their line. Yeah, they still won against the Titans with 9 sacks, but that was the Titans. The Rams are completely different beasts who, they have one of the best defenses in the league, and at times the offense can be questionable, but they still can at least get it done. And sure enough, the offense got what they needed to do. Joe Burrow, he did everything he could. It is not on him. He did everything. The offense did everything they could. It just doesn't help when you have very little time to try to make something out of nothing.
Right. I was watching that entire game and watching basically as the line got mauled by one man in particular. Literally one guy. Mm-hmm. He would shove them out of here like they were children. It was kind of sad to watch. Aaron Donald, I will say this. I did want the Bengals to win. I was rooting for them. Kitty goes meow all the way. But I'm happy Aaron Donald won a ring because he is a generational talent. He deserved a ring. That man is a force to be reckoned with.
And then Matt Stafford also deserved a ring as well.
That's
a man
nice.
Who, a lot of people said he wasn't that guy or he wasn't good. And for him to finally be put in a winning culture after years of being in Detroit and finally getting a chance after just 1 year, literally not a year from being traded, finally got his ring that I think he definitely deserved.
After 10 years of exile, he made it to the big moment. It must feel extra special because, with Tom Brady, he's just there every year. I don't care. Tom gets there every year. But to be exiled to the Lions for 10 years, have all these doubts creep up about you, and then to go out there, execute, and win yourself a Super Bowl. The year that you get traded to the Rams. Wow. Just impressive stuff from Matt Stafford because the kind of stuff you have to overcome from that, the kind of mental battles you have to overcome from that really isn't something that you see from every other player.
And then not to mention, it was a win or bust year for the Rams for the amount that they've traded, the amount of future that they traded for to get all those pieces in order to compete. That says a lot. That was already a lot for the Rams, and the fact that they pulled it off is already impressive because we've seen time beforehand these teams that form super teams, they trade away assets and future and everything, and they're putting a lot on right now, and then say it doesn't work out, and it then bites them for later on.
So it's like you have 1 year to put it all together, and if you don't get it, you will have to wait at least 10 years, if not more, to ever see it again. Mm-hmm. I mean, there's a lot of teams that have gone through that same cycle, failed miserably, and then they just look like complete idiots. But the Rams managed to put it all together. Yes, they had a few key things happen for them, a few key injuries. Like the Bucks would have probably beat them if they had all their pieces there. Niners maybe would have beaten them if they had all their pieces there. They had to beat up on injured teams, but in the end they went out, they did their job, and they got it done.
They got it done.
So hats off to the Rams. Congrats on y'all Super Bowl win. Bengals, biggest keys to their downfall, as you kind of said, offensive line. Their defense played outstanding.
Their defense surprised me a lot. Especially, I just kind of had my doubts a little bit. It's like, okay, the teams they kind of face have been but they definitely held their own against Kansas City. So it was like, okay, maybe they have a chance. And they did what they needed. The one thing was Eli Apple at the very end of the game.
Yeah, I don't know what was going on in Sean McVay's mind to put Eli Apple on the number one receiver on the Rams, Cooper Kupp. I do not know what was going in his mind because Eli Apple got burned.
You mean Zach Taylor?
Zach Taylor.
Zach Taylor.
Sean McVay just took advantage. Yeah, I meant Zach Taylor.
Yeah, Sean McVay took advantage of the and I'm surprised I didn't see a lot of double teaming Cooper Kupp, especially towards the final minutes. It's like, you know who it's going to be going to. Beckham tore his ACL in the middle of the game, and he was balling out for most of it.
He could have had a second touchdown. He probably would have.
He probably could have, but he was out. You already know you have an offensive player of the year and everything.
Yeah.
Had over 2,000 receiving yards. You know, it was literally one of the hardest people to stop. You know who it's going to go to, and they did not double team him. I would have rather, if I was the Bengals, I would rather have someone else try to beat you than Cooper Kupp. Because if you give Cooper Kupp any type of advantage or momentum, that's it. The Rams, as we saw, as soon as Cooper Kupp got the ball, the Rams offense then started looking how they always were supposed to look.
Right.
They started getting going and then eventually scored points.
And I mean, look who's MVP after that. Cooper
Kupp.
The man who torched the Bengals secondary for the game-winning drive. Making history, cementing his legacy as maybe one of the greatest receivers. Probably the greatest receiving season we've seen since Jerry Rice.
Yeah.
For sure. Winning the Triple Crown, he did all that in 1 year. It took Rice, his whole career to do that. Cooper Kupp does it in 1 year.
Yeah.
This could be potentially, with the hard work he puts in, the dedication he puts in, the sheer talent, skill. He has every single component you want in a receiver. Every single one. He's a generational talent and a stud for the Rams. Maybe the best receiver in the league.
I think he's definitely a top 5 receiver. Best receiver in the league, though?
I feel like he is. Who beats him?
Let's see. Well, you have Devontae Adams.
Devontae Adams has good route running, but what else?
DeAndre Hopkins.
Hopkins has been injured.
He has been injured, but when he's healthy, though.
When he's healthy,
Justin Jefferson.
Jefferson is not better than Cooper Kupp. I will say that. Jefferson is good, but Jefferson is not better than Cooper Kupp.
I think Kupp has the potential to. He's definitely up there, though. He's definitely one of the top. Yeah. He's definitely cemented that he's a top receiver. But if you can keep improving, he would definitely be one of the best.
I mean, you think about this is NBA, but Giannis. You're already seeing people are like, oh, he's not quite a top 5, but he will become the number 1, and he's showing time and time again that he might be the number 1 player in the NBA at this point in time, and he still has way more room to grow.
Yeah.
Are you kidding me? He still hasn't quite gotten a shot yet. He only started playing basketball he didn't start playing basketball
till he was around 14.
Right. He's still very inexperienced, and the fact that he is where he is without a bunch of the skill sets that the other guys have, it's holy cow, this guy is going to be a generational talent for years to come.
Well, at the same time, not many people expected him to be where he's at, because he was definitely a project, because he was coming from Greece. He didn't have that much experience with basketball at the time, so not many people were expecting for Giannis to become what he is now. Especially when it comes to foreign players, a lot of the times it's either hit or miss. You're either going to get a generational or a perennial all-star type player, or you're going to get a bust.
Yeah, I think one of the biggest things that comes into it is look at both Cooper Kupp and Giannis have a really, really high work ethic, and that is what has catapulted them to the top.
Because if you look at Cooper Kupp, he wasn't a really like highly recruited type of player.
Yeah.
And even when he got into the league,
Eastern Washington, like
yeah.
Who?
Well, even
what team?
And then when he got into the league, he obviously worked his way up, and not many, like, I didn't even know about Cooper Kupp till really like last year.
Same.
That's when he really started showing, hey, this guy is gonna make a statement for himself.
And he did.
And it kind of reminds me a little bit of Julian Edelman.
Yeah.
Where a lot of people were like, the difference was Julian Edelman was drafted as a QB.
Which is insane to me.
He was drafted as a QB and then put on special teams and then put in the return game and then eventually put for the offense.
And he was a receiver. Like, that kind of, again, work ethic and, like, he just meshed with the Patriots system, too. Which, yeah, just, he does remind me a lot of Edelman in a lot of ways. So, the next thing I wanted to cover. So, there is a hot debate going around that the Bengals were stupid in drafting Jamar Chase over Penei Sewell. I would say Jamar Chase was definitely the right pick over Sewell. Me and Carlo, I think, both agree on this, that the whole reason that Joe Burrow was as explosive as he was, maybe not the whole reason, but a lot of the reason was because of Jamar Chase.
Yeah.
Like, he took that offense and he catapulted it to another level because, like, he had an explosiveness about him. He had that, like, just ability
the connection as well.
Right.
What also helps.
The previous connection. Like, yeah, Joe Burrow didn't have that much time to throw. It didn't help. But, like, having a number one weapon is so much more key than, like, having, like, one decent offensive lineman. Because Penei Sewell didn't even do that much. He was good, but he wasn't, like, amazing. He wasn't like maybe like a Trent Williams that we see now, or like one of the top linemen. He wasn't a Tyron Smith.
Yeah. Well, and another thing, you can always build your offensive line later in the draft or like through free agency. But receivers, a lot of times you either get someone that's really, really good, especially when you have the chance to get a talent like Jamar Chase, and you know that you have a receiver and QB connection right off the bat. I mean, you want to have that. You want your QB to be on the same page with the receivers.
Right.
Granted, you do want to get the offensive line and everything, but the fact that the Bengals even made the Super Bowl with their O-line that they had is already impressive enough.
It's a testament to just how explosive that Burrow-Chase connection is, how underrated and how under the radar that defense went over this entire season, and just the fight to continue on and to never, like, they stayed cool, calm, and collected, which is something you only see in, like, guys like Tom Brady. Like, Joe Burrow has a Tom Brady, like he has a, like, I don't know, he has a Tom Brady vibe about him. I really like it.
Yeah.
Like, I think he's even cooler and light, like, he's more, like, level-headed than Tom Brady's at times, because Brady gets heated when things don't go his way.
But at the same time, Brady is a competitor, though. That's why he gets heated. He's a competitor, and he always wants to win. I understand the take of Joe Burrow and Tom Brady, how they're, like, cool and collected. But at the same time, I feel like we shouldn't be doing these comparisons of current players to NFL legends.
Early on. Yeah.
Well, early on, because you can either, if they don't pan out to what people are expecting them to be, then that just, damages their confidence and their development and everything. And not to mention, there will never be another Tom Brady. Like, that was once in a blue moon. The fact that he played as long as he did and won as many rings as he did is probably... it might happen again, but it's once in a blue moon.
If it happens with Burrow, that'd be pretty impressive.
Yeah.
I don't think it will, because Burrow doesn't quite have all that talent around him like Brady did. Burrow could, if he gets the talent and if the pieces, like, if everything falls the way it should, he can make a run for it. Because, I mean, look at, I think one of the biggest, honestly, with Brady's early career, the biggest things that brought him to the Super Bowl was honestly a little bit of luck. A little bit of luck helped out. Having a really good defense helped out. That would play out of its mind.
But also having a coach who understood the game and knew how his quarterback was and fit just having a culture and a system and getting players who bought into that system. Because that was the other thing. You had to buy into the system because you couldn't get anyone and then all of a sudden be good. Because look what happened when New England brought in Chad Ochocinco. Yeah, he was an amazing player for the Bengals, but they brought him in and he just didn't buy into the system.
He didn't like the culture in New England. You have to be willing to submit yourself to that culture of New England.
Yeah.
It's a fierce culture. It is not an easy culture at all.
Yeah, it's not.
But the true winners will stay in there.
Yeah.
Because they want to win and they know what it takes to get there.
Yeah.
They know what the Patriot system is like. It is gritty. It's tough.
Yeah.
But if you want to win, that's where you go, and everyone knows that.
That's where everyone would go at the time. And then, not to mention, like, there would be former players with the Patriots saying, "Oh, it wasn't fun or anything," but it's like,
yeah, it was fun.
well, everyone else would, like Julian Edelman, then come out saying, "Yeah, but winning is fun."
Yeah,
that's the whole thing. Their culture is solely based on winning. They don't care about like having fun or like all this distractions that some other teams have. They just focus on one thing and one thing only, and that is the Super Bowl. That's why you had so many like Patriot staff, when they go to another team, they completely fail because they tried to bring in a culture that is much different than any other organization. The only one that did succeed was Brian Flores.
Brian Flores has been an exceptional coach because he brought the culture of winning without all the cockiness and over the top. Because like Joe Judge, he was way over the top and he didn't set realistic standards. He was just like, "Oh, watch, we're gonna get rid of this. We're gonna do this. We're gonna do this." They did none of it.
Yeah.
It was a clown show down in like
Brian Flores brought a winning attitude and knew what he had and tried to work the best of his team's ability.
Right.
And instill that. And it worked out. I think if the Dolphins just built around that, because they had the pieces. They had the pieces to at least make the playoffs. They were right there. I think they just needed a couple extra pieces, and then eventually, they would start making the playoffs and just keep continuing building. But the problem is now is that a lot of, not just NFL teams, but a lot of pro sports teams in general become like very, very impatient.
Right. They want to win now.
Yeah.
They don't want to win later.
Yeah.
They want to have success now. I mean, the Rams kind of did that to an extent.
But at the same time, the coach that they brought in like boosted them from what they had with Jeff Fisher. Like as soon as they got McVay, it's like boom. And then they traded up to get their franchise QB. And then, they had Todd Gurley the prior year. And then they built around those two. And look how the offense took off.
Right.
It was one of the best offenses we have seen.
It was rivaling the greatest show on turf.
It was up there. And then not to mention the defense as well. Because they had Jeff Fisher at the time, who was like very defensive minded. The defense was, you had Aaron Donald rising up. And then at the time you had Robert Quinn.
Right.
The defense was definitely up there. It was definitely a defense. It was just the offense that lacked behind. But as soon as they got the pieces and the right coach that knew how to work an offense, they took off from there. And then they finally got a QB who understood the game and had that veteran presence and just wanted to win, with Matt Stafford. And then they finally just took off from there.
He fit that Rams system and it just worked to perfection.
Yeah.
So, I'd like to let you take the floor.
All right.
And I'd like for you to discuss what is the future of your New England Patriots. Where do y'all go from here?
I think the biggest issue is we need more playmakers on the offense. Part of the biggest issue with the New England offense, they definitely took a step up from last year, but the problem is they didn't have a true number one receiver. Like Kendrick Bourne, he could possibly develop into one, but he is kind of more of that second option.
Right. He's not like a number one for sure.
Jacoby Myers, same thing. He's more of a second, third option. Nelson Aguilar, he's solid, but They need that true number one option, that true number one receiving threat is the main thing.
Yeah.
And because we already know the run game it worked out for them for the most part.
It really did.
But at the same time, just like what happened with Tennessee, like once the run game wasn't working, the passing game, it was kind of iffy at times.
You stopped Derrick Henry, you stopped that offense.
Yeah, but New England, at least, they could pass, but at the same time, they just couldn't produce many explosive or big plays at times. The defense definitely held their ground. The biggest thing is their linebacking core. They really need to work on that linebacking core and edge rushing. They need more speed, they need younger guys, because the linebacking core they have, Kyle Van Noy, Dante Hightower, they are not where they used to be. It is time to move on from them and start developing younger people, guys who have the speed, who are able to, keep up with just the running backs, tight ends, everyone.
Right.
And then the secondary has kind of been a little bit of an issue, mainly because JC Jackson, JC Jackson definitely proved that he can be that guy. The problem is, it's JC Jackson and that's it. They have no other help with the secondary. Last year, they had Stephon Gilmore and JC Jackson. That helped JC a lot, especially having Stephon Gilmore as the veteran presence, and he's always been that number one, lockdown guy.
Right.
That helped out a lot, but because they only had one true corner, the rest just, they always get burnt or just miscommunication a lot of the times as well.
Right.
The secondary is another thing they really need to work on. Other than that, they are kind of the definition of, they just need like a couple of superstars and then fill in a lot of solid players to really good players, or good players at least, to buy into the system, but also who want to buy into that system, and then maybe, eventually start building back to what New England wants to get to. Because I think Mac is New England's guy. He fits that culture. They just need to build around him and get that number one playmaker, or get some big playmakers for him. Because look how he did in Alabama when he had Jalen Waddle and Devontae Smith.
He went off.
He had two playmakers who he can throw to. Now, granted, he still did pretty good.
Yeah.
So, for what he had, for not having those, playmakers or superstars, he still did what he could, though. And then another thing is, they need a little bit of a culture change with the coaching staff. They need to stop, getting just guys that have either just been there for a long time or have failed with another team and then come back, because, it's worked. But at the same time, they need to start evolving a little bit. Right. We saw that a lot in 2020 when they had Cam Newton. They knew what they had at QB and started evolving with that scheme a lot more as well. They need to get at least some new blood and a little bit of a culture change, because they need to adapt that offense. Because that offense at times is kind of methodical. It's like, all right, we're just going to run and then run again and then screen pass and then check downs. It's like, you need to...
That was Brady's system.
Yeah, it was Brady's system, but that's the thing, though. It worked for Brady, but it doesn't work for everyone. You have to evolve a little bit.
Right.
And I think that's the main thing that the coaching staff just hasn't realized. They see Mac as oh, yes, he's a pocket passer. Therefore, we're going to do everything Brady did. Yeah, it worked for Brady, but that doesn't mean every pocket passing QB is like Brady.
Right.
Because we don't compare Kirk Cousins and Tom Brady together.
They're both
pocket passers, but that's about it. They're completely different players.
That's right.
So I think New England can definitely get back into it. They definitely, at least for just 1 year being out of the playoffs, and the fact that they got back into it and they were stay competitive, that's impressive enough. I think they just need to keep building from that and keep finding playmakers and just get younger and then, spend a little money.
Yeah.
Because we know in years past, Patriots were always criticized for not spending money. They then went out and spent a lot of money on bringing in more pieces.
And then look what happened.
They got back into the playoffs. I think just, the off season. And then another thing as well that I think some people may not may not have been talking about, the O-line. The O-line needs a little bit of upgrading, especially with the tackle positions.
Yes.
Because I don't know why, Trent Brown, when they had him at tackle, everything was fine and dandy, but They kept putting him at guard. I think they just need to find a true tackle, so that way you put Trent Brown at his natural position. Isaiah Wynn this year struggled a lot. Mm-hmm. He either had a lot of holding penalties or he got beat a lot of times. They need to upgrade with the left tackle. Mm-hmm. And then guards as well. The center, we're still good with Mark Andrews. Yeah. He's been our guy. Really just some minor, just pretty much upgrade the line. The line still do well, but you still need to at least upgrade it to a degree.
Right.
Because there's still guys who are inconsistent at times. Get Mac that playmaker that he needs, and then get speed on the defense. That was their biggest Achilles heel, was they did not have speed. And also the D-line. They need to continue to get bigger bodies down there.
Right.
Because every time they ran up, especially when we saw against the Bills when they ran up the middle, they had no answers. They just straight up got bodied.
Yeah.
And then the secondary is solid, but JC needs help. Yes. It can't just be JC and then having third stringers out there with him.
They need one other maybe second or third guy to cover a really good slot receiver if you have one.
Yeah.
Right.
But other than that, New England isn't too far from being back in it. Right now, they're just they're a fringe to playoff team to first round exit. Mm-hmm. Which, for what they had the prior year, is good. But we all know Bill Belichick, he wants to win a Super Bowl again. He wants to prove a point that he can do it without Brady.
Yeah.
And I think he did to a degree where he got back to the playoffs without Brady saying, hey, I can still do this. Mm-hmm. And I think he can, but he definitely needs to get more people who can adapt to this era. A lot more explosive plays.
Right.
Also get more speed and more playmaking ability. And I think New England can get back in it.
Yeah.
Now, with my spiel about my New England Patriots, it is now your turn to give your spiel about the so-called America's team, a.k.a. the Dallas Cowboys, a.k.a. the accident that is waiting to happen.
Dallas. So, our biggest issue last year was pretty obvious, but I know Jerry's not going to listen to this. And I know Jerry does not listen to anybody. The biggest way, and I know it's unrealistic, the biggest way for the Cowboys to be good is if Jerry dies. I'm being honest. But, okay. Other than Jerry being 6 feet under, the way the Cowboys can get back to the Super Bowl is if we look at things from a realistic standpoint, and we look at what were our biggest actual weaknesses and not blame everything on circumstances out of our control, like referees, or things that were within our control, like running a quarterback draw with 14 seconds left. I don't know, that would have helped if we didn't do that. Mm-hmm. I think our biggest weakness on their team last year was coaching. Truthfully, Mike McCarthy should have been fired. He should have been gone. He should have been exiled the second he made us. We had the talent to go to the Super Bowl. We really did. I'm not being cocky about that. I am 100% certain we had the talent pool to go to the Super Bowl if we did not have a coach that was constantly we were getting penalized because he didn't know how to discipline a team. Mm-hmm. We need a coach that knows how to discipline. We need a Brian Flores. Are we going to get a Brian Flores? No. But if Jerry can probably step up to Mike and be like, hey, Mike, we need to discipline our players. We need to make sure that they're not committing 14 penalties a game. Mm-hmm. We'll get back into it. We'll get back to the dance. Mm-hmm. The other thing is Dak the answer? I need a little more time to really figure that out because the loss that we had in the playoffs was not solely on him. Yes, he had a really rough first 2 quarters where he did not look like himself and he was he seemed rickety. He didn't seem ready for the playoffs. He didn't seem ready to come back. But after the half ended, he seemed to get into his groove. He seemed to started to find a rhythm offensively. By then it was too late. What they need is they also need to use Pollard a lot more. Notice that the one drive that we used Tony Pollard was the drive that we scored in the first half. Tony Pollard is the guy for us. He is the guy. He's our number one guy over Zeke. I will take him over Zeke any day. Yes, Zeke has the blocking ability, and Pollard can be a little bit of a liability there. But Zeke is old. Zeke is kind of slow. Well, he's not even that old. He's slow.
He's just not what he was.
Yeah.
He's getting paid top dollar to be one of the best running backs, and he's not proving it. It's like he's lost his step in the speed and elusiveness that he's had.
Exactly. Whereas Pollard has that speed. He has the explosive spark that really is what our offense needed. What our offense lacked toward the end of the season, I think a lot of it came down to like heart and intensity, because I think what was happening every time is we just kind of like lost our step. And then we'd get kind of like, unmotivated, undisciplined, like every high school team would after they're, down by 10. And they wouldn't, unlike Brady, who would like immediately be like, okay, don't look at the score. Just think about what is our next move. They would just get discouraged and be like, oh, that's it.
Yeah.
Except when Tony Pollard was on the field. When Pollard was on the field, there was a different explosiveness about the Cowboys. There was a different mindset with the Cowboys when Tony Pollard was on the field. And it was a mindset of winning. It was a culture of winning when Tony Pollard was out on the field. So I think the biggest thing is we need to use Tony Pollard more.
And I think another huge issue as well was what was always praised for Dallas was their offensive line.
Yes. Our offensive line, it was not atrocious, but it was not good by any means.
It's not what it used to be. The only bright factor of Dallas's offensive line was Zach Martin. That was the only bright spot. Tyron Smith, at times, yes, but now his issue is he can't stay healthy anymore.
Right. He's gotten older, and it's harder for him to stay healthy with all the injuries to elbow or like back.
He's getting a lot of back injuries lately. Yeah.
And we've seen that Connor Williams is not the guy. We need him out of there. Cut him as soon as you can. Connor Williams is not the answer at left guard. Other guys, I don't remember who else was on our offensive line. La'el Collins, was he at right tackle or right guard? I can't remember.
Right tackle.
Right tackle. He was solid. I'd keep him where he's at. Basically our guards, besides Zach Martin. Also our center, Biotish. It was more just holds. We were getting called for holding penalties where, we shouldn't have been called for the numerous, basically, Connor Williams had a hold, every single game, without a doubt. So I think he needs to be off the offensive line. He needs to go be a backup. We need to draft ourselves a good guard, maybe in the 3rd or 4th round, because I feel like anyone at this point is better than Connor Williams, if we're being honest. Defensively, obviously, one of our biggest issues going into next year is the fact that this was kind of our year to put everything together. This needed to be our year because we knew the fires of cap hell were coming for us this coming year. I think we're already $30 million over the cap, which is bad. So the biggest acquisitions, unpopular opinion, I would cut Amari Cooper or trade him if we can. I'd probably cut him because it would save a lot of cap, and plus he's not who he used to be.
He's getting paid so much. He's getting paid top dollar for one of the highest receivers, and he does not produce in the big moments.
No, he shows up when he wants to.
Yeah.
And otherwise, he doesn't make his presence known at all. Whereas CD, pay CD the big bucks. CD, we need to keep on the field. He's explosive. He's everything you want in a receiver.
Even Gallup, at times, is solid as well.
Also, the other thing I question, which is unpopular opinion, I question Kellen Moore a lot. He's not I don't think he's the wonder boy that he's made out to be, because the problem with our offensive scheming, and I think it was so well said by this one guy, it was on this Dallas Cowboys Network fan page on Instagram. He basically said that our scheming is it's messed up. What we love to do is we love to look for Dalton Schultz and Blake Jarwin, our tight ends, kind of that that kind of style of play. Whereas we need to be looking like we were in 2018. The reason our offense was so explosive was because we used Amari Cooper.
Yeah.
We had him on slant routes, like basically everything, every kind of route you could give to Amari Cooper, he was able to run it. He was able to get open. He was able to score. That was what we did. CD was barely able to be found in that game against the Niners. Where was CD? I think he had maybe one catch. Maybe none. He might have not had a single catch. And he's our top guy. He's our number one guy. We need to use him. We were not using CD enough at all, and I think that's what killed our offense. We were always forcing it to Dalton Schultz and to our running backs, which is good. And that the only thing is, I feel like that's what New England kind of does to an extent.
New England does it to an extent, and it works for them.
But it doesn't work for us.
Yeah, that's the only thing.
That's not our skill position.
That's not... It's... What may work for one team doesn't work for everyone else. Like, you need the personnel, the personality. You need the right environment for certain schemes to work.
Right. As far as defense goes, I think the only thing we need is a little more secondary help, because Trayvon Diggs, to me, once he stops getting burned every play in coverage is the day that we can win a Super Bowl. Because yes, he's incredible at getting interceptions and he gets them left and right. But his problem is he gets burned in coverage far too much because of that aggressive style of play. They use it against him. Because they know he's going to bite on all those routes. So you can't just... You've got to teach... not CD. You have to teach Trayvon to not get... to not bite on those routes, to not play so aggressively. Because there is a certain balance between being aggressive and being a little more conservative when it comes to every single kind of route. Because he would get gashed on the simplest of little cuts, simplest of things, because he'd bite on all of them.
Yeah.
And while, yes, I see the read he's making here, but, teams are going to eventually use that against him. And they started to. And once they started to, he got gashed for yards. And it became really apparent that the amount of yards he gave up was a problem by, week 10 or 11. It was, at least once a game, he was getting burned for a really long touchdown.
I think another thing Dallas needs to upgrade defensively is their D-line. Especially if you have... Well, because you have Randy Gregory's a free agent. DeMarcus Lawrence is getting paid top dollar. Really has not produced.
I would cut Marcus Lawrence.
And then defensive tackles, I mean... Ever since Tyrone Crawford left, their defensive... especially the nose tackle and everything, it just hasn't been the same.
Neville Gallimore? He's not that good.
No.
He's not the guy. We do need some bolstering on defensive line, especially if all we have is Randy Gregory next year. We need one more key pass rusher, and I think we'll have a chance.
Well, even linebacking as well.
Linebacking, maybe one more guy, but I feel like Micah Parsons is a stud.
Well, you only have him. You have Jabril Cox. Jabril Cox can be good.
He's solid.
But
Vander Esch?
They're most likely going to let Vander Esch walk.
Yeah, the injuries that he's had,
it's already concerning. He's already looking like Sean Lee again.
That's not what you want.
Which, when he's on the field, when both of them are on the field, they make their presence known. But the keyword, when they're on the fields.
Yeah, and he hasn't been on the field as of lately.
Secondary has always, though, but as you said, secondary has always been Dallas's Achilles heel.
Always. I mean, that was the reason we lost in 2016. It ultimately was. It was because our secondary sold, Jared Cook got that wide open, and Mason Crosby hit a 51-yarder on us. Which I remember that to this day because that was the first Dallas playoff game I actually watched. So that hurt because I really thought we had a chance to make it to the dance. We really looked like it. We were the number one seed. We had everything going for us. We were a powerhouse. We beat every single team besides the New York Giants. I mean, if you count the Eagles in Week 17, which I don't, that wasn't really an actual loss. That was just us playing our backups. We beat every single team in the league besides the New York Giants. We looked unstoppable. And then we go and we laid an egg against the Packers, a team that we beat in the regular season.
In Lambeau as well.
Yeah, we beat them in Lambeau, which nobody had us doing. Everyone was like, oh, Rodgers owns them. And then we went in and shut them down. So to lose in that way when I really thought we were going to the Super Bowl, it just wasn't a good look.
Hey, but it was a great year for me. 28-3.
28-3 was that year. That is true. Those were the glory days for you. We're both reliving the glory days.
I mean, New England is more likely to at least make some noise than Dallas.
Till Jerry's 6 feet under.
Or unless Jerry finally decides to not just have this ego of wanting attention and just wanting staff who are yes men, then they have a shot. But because the only staff member that they have that I don't see as a yes man is the defensive coordinator,
Dan Quinn.
Dan Quinn. That's the only staff.
Only sensible hire we have.
Yeah. But otherwise, Mike McCarthy, he's definitely a puppet in Jerry's scheme. Kellen Moore, I really think a lot of people have overhyped him for offensive coordinator. Because the offense, it should not be that inconsistent or that methodical at times with that talent. It should look like Kansas City's offense.
We have the pieces to.
They have the pieces to be like that. To have the top offense like the Bills or Kansas City. They have the personnel to be that explosive. They just at times don't do it.
We just disappear.
Unless if it's against teams, non-playoff teams,
or the NFC East,
then yes, they look amazing. But when they face a top team or actual playoff team, top team such as Kansas City or the Bills or Tampa Bay this year, or it should you already know where I'm going. They just don't show up.
The only playoff team we showed up against was your Patriots.
Yeah,
and we showed up. I think we showed up against the Bucks, which again, that was prior to Week 7, prior to the bye week. Then then Dak's calf got injured, and basically everything
fell downhill.
Apart. Yeah, but yeah, that's my spiel about the Cowboys. So my next biggest topic I kind of wanted to cover was we saw the Bengals this year come out of nowhere. Like truly, did anybody think the Cincinnati Bengals, even delusional Bengals fans, didn't think they were going to the Super Bowl?
Many people saw them going not even 6-10 anymore. 6-11.
Most people, I had them winning 8 games at best.
Like 6 to 8 games at most.
Like if they were really lucky and if all the cards went their way, everything went right, first round exit.
Yeah.
That was what I thought. And then we saw that.
Yeah.
So, in your eyes, who's one team that you could see that was a non-playoff team, maybe very not good team, who could just be that surprise Super Bowl team next year if it does happen next year? Probably won't, but
if it does happen, see, that's hard because right now so much is unpredictable, especially when it comes to quarterback situations. Because we're hearing news about Kyler Murray's unhappy, or Aaron Rodgers. We've had the drama with Green Bay this entire year, and then there's also Deshaun Watson, and then you also have Seattle with Russell Wilson. I mean, that's the main thing that you have to take in consideration. I would say if the Broncos can land Aaron Rodgers, I think they would have a shot.
Here's a team. I might sound absolutely nuts. Maybe 5 wins or below, because that was what the Bengals were. So Broncos, I feel like, are kind of like a Stafford situation, which we can cover in a little bit.
All right.
So I'm going 6 wins or below.
Okay.
My pick for that, and I might sound absolutely nuts, but I'm going to pick the Jacksonville Jaguars. And let me explain why. Okay. I sound insane. Recall 20 years ago, when Peyton Manning first stepped into the league, a highly touted prospect out of Tennessee. His rookie year was abysmal. He set a rookie record for interceptions. He was dog water. He was awful. He was so bad. But his second year, he turned around completely. He became the highly touted prospect that everyone wanted. He impressed me. Like, I watched that and I see Trevor Lawrence. First year was in a really bad system.
It was
had an awful head coach.
It was a bad situation for the entire year.
Yeah.
He didn't have the talent. He also grew up. He didn't grow up. He was being developed in a terrible situation, especially with all the drama that was unfolding with Urban Meyer.
Right.
They should have never hired Urban Meyer to begin with.
Terrible hire.
And as soon as players were already complaining about Urban Meyer and then apparent allegations of him kicking players, they should have just kicked Urban to the curb.
Yes. Urban should have never been there to begin with. Like, the situation was bad from the get-go. The reason why I picked the Jags was because they have a few of those same pieces. I'm pretty sure they still have Miles Jack. They still have, he was a top linebacker a couple years back. Their secondary can be so-so, but it still has potential to be really good if they can get a lockdown corner in free agency. They have the pieces as far as defensive end goes to make a run. They have Josh Allen, other Josh Allen,
Yeah, linebacker Josh
Allen, who's also a really good pass rusher. They have a couple of key pass rushers. Their secondary is not terrible, but it is serviceable.
Their defense is slightly above average.
It's slightly above average.
They can definitely improve. They really need
Which is a Bengals-like defense, right? Under the radar players.
They really, though, need to address the O-line.
Which is exactly what the Bengals had. Like, look at how similar these teams are. Besides,
I think they could definitely get the right pieces. The main thing is, can they get the right culture?
That's true. If they can, I wonder if
because you have
Doug Peterson might be the guy.
Maybe, but you also have to realize you're comparing the Bengals and the Jags. The Bengals already had Zach Taylor prior to Joe Burrow, so they already had that culture and system in place. And as soon as they got Joe Burrow, he's already under Zach Taylor's wing and everything.
Right.
So they built from that. So they already have that connection and that environment and culture to build with.
Yeah, they did. That's true. But I don't know. I like the Doug Peterson hire. I think that having his offensive skill set will help them to draft. I'm hoping that the Jaguars will address one position that I think killed them was Trevor Lawrence had nobody to throw to.
That was the main thing. Well, DJ Clark, but
DJ Clark is good, but he needs a second guy.
He needs
a breakout receiver.
He needs more guys for sure.
And if they address O-line for sure, if they get one solid O-lineman and they get one breakout star receiver and they get a lockdown corner, those three pieces I think can take them to the Super Bowl. Because we saw with the Bengals, you don't need an O-line, you don't need a quality head coach, you don't need a quality lots of things to make the Super Bowl. If you just have a guy who has a breakout season like Joe Burrow and Jamar Chase did, and you have a serviceable defense that can shut down teams kind of out of nowhere. The Jags have the potential to do that. Trevor Lawrence, if he has a breakout season, we saw what he did at Clemson. Oh my goodness, the man was one of the biggest prospects
since Andrew Luck.
Since Andrew Luck, yes, which is so Peyton Manning-esque of him. So Peyton Manning-esque.
But at the same time, I think, and even this year, we saw some flashes of what he can do.
Right.
If you just have the right system and the right players for him, he could definitely be that generational type QB that the Jags want in him.
Right.
So kind of going back to if we're going teams under 6 wins, then like I said, I did earlier say the Broncos, but since we are doing teams under 6 wins, what about the Jets?
Ooh.
With Robert Saleh, that defense showed. The defense definitely improved a lot. You just need to really build up that offense is the main thing.
Okay.
They really need to build up the offense.
That's true. If you can have a serviceable enough offense with a decent quarterback, like a Teddy Bridgewater, say they sign Teddy Bridgewater, or you sign, I don't know, some guy in free agency who's
and then
decent.
there's also rumors about, what if Russell Wilson gets traded?
Deshaun Watson to the Jets could potentially, if he actually returns to his 2017-2018 form.
But I think, okay, so even let's say they don't get any quarterbacks like Russell Wilson or Deshaun Watson or anyone. They decide to just, stick with Zach Wilson. They's like, okay, you know what? It's his rookie year. He didn't have anyone out there. They decide to stick with Zach Wilson.
Right.
I think Zach Wilson, because Zach Wilson is one of those guys who has a very high ceiling and a very low floor. He has the potential to be really good, but he just needs the right players with him, and I think he just needs to be developed under the right staff. He needs time for sure, because he's kind of like a Patrick Mahomes type player. He's a guy who is able to move out the pocket and go for those big explosive plays, and we saw that a lot this year. He would always try to make those big explosive plays. They just didn't go in his favor, and he was very turnover heavy. I think it can either go two ways. He can either learn from that and be like Peyton Manning and, build from that, or it's just going to get to him so much to a level that he just can't recover from that, and it just hinders him throughout his playing career.
Yeah, boom or bust. That is the definition of a boom or bust quarterback right there.
Yeah.
So I agree with that, but I feel like one of the biggest things that the Jets need, they need a number one guy.
Yeah.
At wideout. Who do they have right now? Because I don't even know if they have Braxton Berrios. Right? Is he still there? I'm pretty sure he's still there.
Yeah. They had Jameson. I know they had Jamison Crowder.
Jamison Crowder was solid. They had a couple of guys who were solid, but they didn't have a breakout receiver.
Yeah. They definitely need. Okay, so Braxton Berrios. They had Elijah Moore.
They had a lot of solid guys, but there was nobody who was like over the top.
They also had Corey Davis as well.
Corey Davis is kind of a bust.
And then Jamison Crowder. So they had solid wideouts, but they didn't have like a true playmaker.
A true number one.
And then of course upgrade the offensive line.
Mekhi Becton is good, but he's not developed yet. He needs time. You just got to get some more pieces on that.
They need to get more. And what's hard about playing for a team in New York is the fan base is very impatient. So that is my one concern with the Jets, and then same with the Giants. If they can play it right, the only reason why I like the Jets more is because of Robert Saleh, and you can tell the culture has changed a lot.
Yes,
they seemed more competitive, especially that defense seemed. If they can get the right piece, if they can get more talent on that defense is going to be very scary for years to come. The offense, they can definitely improve on that as well by getting more playmakers. Just the only thing is right now, I think the Jets need 4 years max to really get those high draft picks and rebuild and just trust the process. But the thing is, do they have that kind of patience though? Is the other thing. New
York.
Yeah.
New York wants to win now.
Yeah.
We saw that with LA. I mean, LA just decided, they said, screw it, let's just trade all our draft picks. I mean, it worked for them.
It worked for them, but at the same time, they did kind of tank a little.
They had a drop-off year.
Yeah.
Last year was so-so for that team.
They also had to tank, especially
early on.
They tanked. Well, at the time they were St. Louis, but they still tanked.
Oh yeah.
Before they got to where they are,
and then the first year in LA.
Yeah, the first year they were solid, but they were not there yet.
The first year in LA, their offense was abysmal, and Jared Goff looked like he was a bust. Everything was nothing.
Everything was going wrong but as soon as they, got Sean McVay and everyone, and then eventually build up from that culture, and then really started going all in with all these pieces, it finally started working for them.
And now they got a Super Bowl ring to prove it.
Yeah.
So, yeah, I think those are kind of like our Bengals-esque type of teams that can catapult to a playoff team or even a Super Bowl team.
Very long shot.
Very big long shot, for sure.
Especially if we're going underneath 7-6 wins. That is a very, very long shot. But,
Bengals did it.
Bengals did it. Anything is possible at this point.
So kind of the last thing I'd like to cover was we saw this year with the Rams. They decided to trade away Jared Goff because he was not being a serviceable quarterback even at that point. He started to, he was committing turnovers. He wasn't making those same throws, and he wasn't that same explosive player that he was early on. So they traded for Matthew Stafford, and look where it led them in year one. So what do you think is one team that's kind of a quarterback away? What is a team that is a quarterback away from getting to the dance, from getting to the Super Bowl, from getting a ring?
Yeah. I mean, of course you have the Buccaneers.
Yes.
I mean, they lost Tom Brady, but they were still good, but they still pretty much have the same team. The only question, though, is Chris Godwin. That is the only thing, because he is going to get paid somewhere. Are the Bucks going to pay, are they going to pay him, or are they going to franchise tag, or are they going to let him walk? That is the only thing.
Right.
And if they do let him walk, who would they find?
Yeah.
That's another thing.
Because they need a number 2. They need a solid number 2.
Well, they need a number 1.
They have Mike Evans.
Well, Mike Evans, yeah. They still have Mike Evans, that's right. Mike Evans is the number, but at the same time, Mike Evans is getting older.
They need a true, number 2. Maybe someone younger.
Someone, true number 2, but can eventually become that number 1. Chris Godwin was, he wasn't, because you had Mike Evans, but at the same time, you could put both of them as a number 1. We already know Mike Evans was number 1, but Chris Godwin as well could be that number 1 as well. He had that ability to be a number 1.
He had this playmaking.
Yeah.
He had all the potential there. But now with him getting paid elsewhere, the Bucks might need to find another guy who can become a number 1 in the future.
Yeah.
Another guy who's kind of the number 2 for now, but becomes number 1.
And that's either through the draft or wherever. But at the same time, it's one of those things as well that isn't as simple, because you could find someone in the draft, but if the Buccaneers want another QB, they're going to have, and they want, a guy that's already established, they're going to have to trade a lot.
They're going to have to pay him the big bucks.
Yeah.
So I think a team, so you're going to say the Buccaneers is kind of your team. That's a quarterback away.
Maybe, but it's a lot more complicated with the Bucks going into this, because in the past it was they were quarterback away.
Truly a quarterback away.
But moving on now, it's kind of, we already know where the defense is. It's mainly the offense, though, because they need a quarterback, and then also you have to, the receivers are stepping up, but you still need weapons as well. And Chris Godwin leaving,
that might take a toll on that
might. Especially if you get someone new, or say they do decide to go with Kyle Trask.
Yeah.
You're going to want to give him as much help as possible.
Yes.
So his development isn't stunted.
That's true.
But as I said earlier, I think if the Denver Broncos or the Indianapolis Colts decide to get Aaron Rodgers, I think they could definitely make a lot of noise.
Yes.
Especially with both of those teams, and we saw a lot this year, especially with the Broncos. The Broncos at many times, they were within winnable games. It was just what held them back was the quarterback.
Right.
They almost beat Kansas City.
Yeah.
But Drew Lock just sold.
He's just not the guy.
He'd never been that guy. He was just kind of thrown in there. And he was like, all right, figure it out.
Thrown to the wolves.
Yeah.
Sink or swim kid.
Yeah. They have the weapons, though. They definitely have the weapons and pieces. And they still have the defense to be good. They just need a quarterback. And have a guy like Aaron Rodgers come in, I mean, I think that definitely elevates.
Yeah.
And then same time with Indianapolis, they literally have everything they can. They just need a better QB.
My under-the-radar team, one of my favorite teams, my team that is a quarterback away from potentially winning the Super Bowl, if they can get over their legacy of failure, is the Cleveland Browns. The Cleveland Browns have an incredible rushing attack, a very underrated and stout offensive line, a defense that can make so much noise with possibly the best pass rusher besides Aaron Donald in the game, Myles Garrett, who could have won Defensive Player of the Year, a stout linebacking core. good guys on the secondary. Really good guys on the secondary. You have Denzel Ward. You have a lockdown corner in Denzel Ward. You have a couple other guys. You have weapons and like you have quite a few wideouts. You have Jarvis.
You have Jarvis and Njoku.
Mm-hmm. And you have Donovan Peoples-Jones, who kind of emerged as like a possible number 3 receiver. Mm-hmm. You have the guys there. Mm-hmm. If you got a guy like Aaron Rodgers, or if they find like they draft themselves a good quarterback,
or if they decide to get Russell Wilson
to the Browns,
Deshaun Watson.
I feel like Deshaun Watson to the Browns could be a really, really good move because of those plays he makes downfield.
Yeah.
I like Russell Wilson on the Browns too. I like all of them on the Browns. All of them fit that Browns system. To me, I feel like the best of all of them is obviously Aaron Rodgers, not just because of talent, like wise, because he's kind of in his like prime. He's like it's do or die right now.
Yeah.
But because of his pocket presence with the line around him and the fact that he can use the rushing game to his advantage, I feel like they are Aaron Rodgers away.
And just the intangibles that he has as well.
Right. Even though he's had some like questionable moments in the clutch, I think for the most part he performs. It's the team around him that always sells. Mm-hmm. This time he has a defense. Mm-hmm. This time he has the weapons. This time he has the rushing game. He has all the pieces put together. They have a good special teams.
Yeah.
Even the Packers special teams sold.
Yeah.
Like everyone sold the special teams. The defense didn't really sell. The offensive weapons sold. The line sold. Basically everybody sold.
Yeah.
For the Packers. Whereas he's coming to a system that they've already kind of established that culture of winning and that expectation, like, we're a good football team.
Yeah, they've gotten away from, okay, we're just going to tank, and then, maybe next year we'll find that guy. Mm-hmm. But it's one of those, everyone questioned Baker a lot this year. Mm-hmm. At the same time, he got injured. So he was playing through injury. But even throughout the years, it was more of the run game that carried the Browns to where they were.
That two-headed monster.
Even this year as well, it was, once again, the run game that carried him.
Maybe they need a Mac Jones-like guy, more of a game manager rather than somebody who's like the number one. Here's a long shot.
Or what if, like, you get Kirk Cousins to the Browns?
That could be a move right there. Mm-hmm. I don't know. For some reason, if they play their cards right, and if he stops committing so many turnovers, Carson Wentz to the Browns. If he stopped being a turnover machine, like he was early on in Indianapolis before Week 16.
Yeah.
If we can see that version of Carson Wentz, I think that's a team that could make some noise.
Yeah.
Like some serious noise.
I think Carson Wentz, and we've seen what he can do. He has the ability. The problem is he really turns the ball over and makes questionable play decisions.
Mm-hmm. He forces it too much. And if he can learn to be a game manager like he was in Indianapolis, and if they establish that culture again, because the Browns have that culture and he goes into a system that they're ready to win, he will have success. I mean, look at when he had the pieces around him before he tore his ACL.
In Philadelphia.
Oh my goodness.
No one could stop him. No one could stop that offense.
The offense was going off.
Mm-hmm.
Like,
that was one of the most complete teams.
Yes.
That year. Because you had the defense who, the D-line, like Fletcher Cox and everyone.
Cox, Brandon Graham, like two of the best in the game.
You had an elite D-line. The linebacking core was solid. The secondary, a lot of people don't credit the secondary of that Eagles team. They were good, man.
Yeah.
And that offense as well. That offense, Alshon Jeffrey looked unstoppable at times. And then you had Darren Sproles and everyone. Mm-hmm. That was a good team.
Yeah. So I think that's going to conclude our podcast, y'all. I hope y'all enjoyed it. Let me know what y'all want to see, because honestly, we're past the NFL season, so what do we do next?
We could do the NBA. NBA playoffs are starting to come up, so is March Madness.
That's true. March Madness could be one. March Madness is an idea. Hopefully we're going to have some guests on here.
And then we can also do NFL mock drafts coming up.
True. Mock draft for sure.
Because the offseason is coming. The offseason is now. And then the draft for the NFL is coming up.
Which will be an interesting draft because I don't feel like... I'll be honest, I don't think it's one of the best draft classes.
What's interesting is that the first picks is either going to be an offensive lineman or a D lineman.
which is kind of, I feel like it's very similar to the 2013 draft, where it was like an offensive lineman who got picked first, and there just wasn't a lot of talent on the board until the later rounds, where it was kind of like you found those guys, and it was just like a big hit.
Yeah.
Whereas the early rounds was just like kind of like, these guys are okay, but they're not amazing. They're not living up to number 1 overall picks.
Yeah, it's more of every other position seems more. I don't know how to explain it. Like, every other position just seems stand out. Especially this year with the QB class. There's some good, solid guys, but it wasn't like last year when you had 5 dudes taken in the first round and all of them have the potential to be franchise-changing.
2020 was the quarterback draft.
Because you had Trey Lance, Trevor Lawrence, Justin Fields, Mac Jones. I literally said his name for the Jets.
Zach Wilson.
Oh my gosh, I'm already forgetting names now. But yes, you have 5 first-round QBs, and all of them they're all unique in some way and have that ability to change their franchise.
Yeah, that's 2021. 2020 also had Joe Burrow.
They had Joe Burrow, Tua Tagovailoa,
Justin Herbert. Jordan Love.
Yeah.
Jordan Love. If he develops, I mean, he could be really good. He could.
But at the same time, the Packers really should have just built around
Denzel Mims should have been. That literally should have been their pick, but they didn't take him.
Yeah.
Denzel Mims or Patrick Queen was right there for them.
Yeah.
Holy cow, they really missed out. Yeah. Yeah. Anyway, hope y'all enjoyed the podcast. Hopefully, we'll see y'all in the next one.